Hi everyone, my name is Erica Lundahl with Mountaineers Books web series. This evening our presenters are Robert and Daisy Kunstaetter, the co-authors of Trekking Peru, A Traveler's Guide. Our web series presentations are offered almost monthly, but we'll be skipping December, so we hope you'll check back often to see what we have coming up in January 2018. If a presentation lands on a day you can't attend, feel free to register anyway because we will email you a recording of the presentation that you can watch at any time, any place that is convenient for you. Robert and Daisy Kunstaetter are trail-tested authors and adventurers who bring the high quality of work they are known for to bear on Peru's excellent trekking options. The Kunstaetters have lived in South America for decades and written or contributed to 25 books about the continent, including the classic South American Handbook, which is in its 94th edition. That's right. Their book, Trekking Peru, looks beyond the crowds of Machu Picchu, leading you to stunning glaciated mountain ranges, ethereal cloud forests, verdant valleys, and some of the most fascinating archaeological and cultural attractions in all of the Americas. Their book includes 30 detailed treks with history and cultural information, detailed routes and elevation profiles, and much more. For tonight's presentation, we're partnering with the Footprint Travel Guides, and if you joined us this evening through an invitation from Footprint, it's a pleasure to have you. Robert and Daisy's presentation will run about 30 minutes, followed by a Q&A period. Feel free to submit questions at any time during the presentation in the question box you can see on the right side of your screen. So, let's get started. Welcome, Robert and Daisy. I'm handing the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Erica. Buenas noches. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And thank you especially to those who are staying up late to be with us in the East Coast and other places. I would like to thank first our sponsors, the Mountaineers, Footprint Handbooks, and their associates, and our mentor in Peru, Ricardo Espinosa. We're here to tell you about how wonderful it is to trek in Peru, and I hope you will enjoy it. Trekking Peru, our latest book, will give you a little, tonight will give you a little taste of what Trekking Peru is all about. So, where on earth is Peru, you might ask? Imagine most of you know, but it's on the west coast of South America, and it's the third largest country in South America after Brazil and Argentina. And why Peru? Well, there's so much to say about that. It's so rich and diverse, a wonderful trekking destination. It has world-class natural, archaeological, and cultural attractions. The Andes Mountains have several cordilleras, several ranges, beautiful glaciated summits. Among the ranges is the Cordillera Blanca, for instance, 189 kilometers long. And believe me, trekking there is a very special option. You'll be trekking at the foot of mountains that are over 6,000 meters high, like Tocarajo and El Sangate. Geology is very interesting. There are volcanoes. You can see in the middle of this slide is Sabancaya in action. There's a little plume of ash there. There are some very impressive canyons, like the Colca Canyon in this slide, which is 3,270 meters deep. And the even deeper one, Cotahuasi Canyon, 3,354 meters deep. There are treks on both these canyons, and as you can see, they're very impressive. The hillsides are terraced, and that terracing was done very long ago. There are some interesting rock formations, even rock forests, and some odd things like this glacial erratic that was pushed here who knows how many million years ago. And people at the base are just a little dot. The scenery includes some beautiful lakes and waterfalls. Perhaps my favorite is Laguna Tixuquioc. This deep blue color, believe it or not, was not painted in. It's not photoshopped. That's what it looks like. And it's not even the reflection of the sky. When the clouds move in, it's still deep blue. And you go to the shore and you see clear water straight down to the rocks. It's pretty amazing. It's surrounded by some beautiful polylepis forests, the highest forests in the world. And there's the well-known Lago Titicaca, the highest navigable lake in the world. It's up at 3,810 meters above sea level, and another beautiful trekking destination. A number of waterfalls. Gocta, in the north of Peru, is the third highest in the world at 771 meters tall, and an amazing feeling to stand at the base of it. You just look up and you feel like so insignificant. It's amazing, and it's surrounded by beautiful cloud forest. The flora can be seen all over the country. There's some beautiful specimens. The country has 190 natural protected areas. Some of them are national parks and reserves, but there are many private reserves as well. And you'll find some beautiful flowers, especially if you go in May. But all year you'll find something. Like this Espeletia, high altitude composite in the daisy family. And some beautiful cacti with flowers. And watch out, don't step on them. Some are really tiny. It's happened. The fauna is also varied. Beautiful birds, a variety of birds. This flicker and the woodpecker family likes to make its home in someone else's home. It'll make a hole in adobe walls, and people have to watch out for them because they can make. We've seen old walls pierced with holes. There are mammals like the taruca, a large deer, and small vizcacha. It's like a rabbit. It hops like a rabbit, but it has a huge tail, and it stands very still in the rocks, and all of a sudden you turn around and you see a rock jumping, and there it is. Very nice too. Peru's archaeology is well known. Everybody's heard of the Incas. Before the Incas, there were many other groups, and remains from their cultures are all over Peru. Choquequirao is an Inca site. It's near Machu Picchu. It's in the same department in Cusco. And these terraces just give you an idea of what they did there over 600 years ago. We were in a site just north of here, spent the night, and when we got to the next town and the next day, somebody asked, "Are you okay? You know, where were you during the earthquake?" Well, we were in a structure like this, and we didn't feel a thing. So it's pretty amazing what they've done in the past. And here's an example of a different culture, the Chachapoya culture in the north of Peru, surrounded by cloud forest. Many of these ruins were lost because they were just covered by the cloud forest, and only now they're uncovering every time new ones. The culture in Peru is not only about the past, the archaeology. The living culture can be experienced. There are still a few llama caravans like this one, where tradespeople would take products like corn from the lowlands and go exchange them for potatoes in the highlands. Um, there are some beautiful fiestas, celebrations, and in general, these celebrations share something from the past and something from the present. They they combine. There's a syncretism between old beliefs that are still very much part of the current culture, like the Apus, the mountain deities, are very important, and that's combined with the Catholic celebration, and they go hand in hand together. You'll meet some wonderful people that make your trekking, your experience there special. We met this lady and her children, Nenny. She called us over, we started talking, and before we knew it, her kids were guiding us. They took us to see a cave we were looking for where there are some petroglyphs. And we got to know them, and I believe it was a year or two later, we were back, and we looked for her, and it was like having an old friend. There are some beautiful kids. Again, a family we met while walking, and they invited us to spend the night. We were going to camp, and they took us maybe an hour out of our way, and there we were, experiencing a new friendship somewhere we had never even heard of. So there are many interesting experiences you can have. You can have the camaraderie with the local people. It really breaks the ice to walk together. People can be shy sometimes. And if you start walking and asking questions, and little by little they open up. It's wonderful. If you prefer solitude, this is a Dutch trekker we met somewhere, and he likes to go high up on his own. It's also there. So, where do you trek in Peru? In our guide, we talk about 6 different regions throughout the highlands. The main geographic characteristic of the country is the Andes Mountains. They go from northwest to southeast, roughly, the whole length of the country, and they divide Peru into 3 natural regions: the coast, which is mainly arid on the west, the highlands, where the mountain ranges are, and the Amazon basin to the east. And our preference, and perhaps the best suited region for trekking, is the highlands. So we have, as I mentioned, 6 regions throughout the highlands. And in a period of 3 years of research, we covered these regions. There are 30 treks that are described in Trekking Peru. And we added up all the numbers, and it came to 1,500 kilometers. And we hope you will join us and experience some of them. We don't have time to explain to you just what the blue, everything that the book talks about. So we have chosen selected one track to give you a little taste of something different, something we found unique. And I will invite Robert to go ahead and tell you all about the last Inca bridge.
Thank you very much, Daisy. You know, Daisy's always been someone who loves the big picture, the grand overview, and she's done a wonderful job giving you a sense of what the grand overview of the book is. And now it's my turn to delve into some of the details by talking about this particular trek that meant a great deal to us. It was a really outstanding experience, and through that try to give you an idea of what you can expect in the write-ups for all the different treks in the book. This trek led us to the site of the very last authentic Inca bridge in all of Peru, probably in all the Andes. But let's step back for just a moment and talk about the Capatñan, the great Inca road that crisscrossed the empire, that spanned the empire along two main trunks. If you look at the map, the blue line, which runs from roughly the contemporary border, the current border between Colombia and Ecuador, all the way to central Chile and Argentina, around the Rio Maule in Chile and Uspallata on the Argentine side. All along the spine of the Andes, that's the blue line. That was the highland trunk road that ran north-south throughout the empire. And there was a parallel route along the Pacific coast, which is the reddish-brownish line, and that also covered almost the same length, but along the Pacific. And they were joined by these perpendicular roads, the thinner red lines, that connected the two of them. They ran rather like rungs of a ladder, and some of them overshot and began to descend into the Amazon basin to the east. Together, this network tallied up to some 30,000 kilometers of roads. Not all of them built by the Incas by any means. The Incas took advantage of pre-existing roads that had been built by diverse cultures over many, many hundreds, thousands of years, and they consolidated them into this great network, and they put them to work. They took great advantage of this network. It carried the conquering Inca armies as the empire expanded. It carried the wealth of the empire, generally headed to Cusco, the navel of the Inca universe, the center of the empire that they called Tawantinsuyo. And it carried mitimayes, or mitmakuna, entire peoples that had been subjugated and were moved as a block, as a group, to far-flung corners of the empire, to quell resistance in the newly conquered areas, but also to transport the unique skills of each group throughout the great empire. When the Spanish came on the scene, when the Spanish conquistadores arrived, they were struck by this road. It appeared to them to be the greatest thing, the greatest road in the world. You know, the Spanish weren't known for being complimentary to the peoples they conquered. But this was the exception. They just could not believe this road. And I'll read to you just a brief excerpt from some of what Pedro Cieza de León, one of the first Spanish chroniclers, had to say in his 1553 Chronicle El Señorío de los Incas. Its greatness is unmatched in all human history, carved along deep valleys and high sierras, over snow-capped mountains and quagmires, alongside raging torrents, hewn out of the living rock. Through these places it went, level and cobbled, with foundations along the slopes, well cut into the mountains, carved into the cliffs, with retaining walls along the rivers, with steps and landings in the snow, everywhere clean and swept. And there it is today. Large fragments of this road network survive, although sadly many others have disappeared. But there are fragments as much as 100 kilometers long. And you can walk these today. These can be part of your trekking experience in Peru. But to get back to the question of bridges and how they were related to the road, the Inca road engineers had many formidable challenges, but perhaps foremost among these were the great canyons that cut through the Andes, running down either towards the Pacific coast or towards the Amazon basin. In this photo, you can see the Apurimac Canyon to the left, and on the right, one of its tributaries, the canyon of the Rio Blanco. They had to get the road across these things, and it wasn't easy to do. The answer they came up with were rope suspension bridges. And in this sketch from the Chronicles of Felipe Guaman Poma in 1613, you can see a rope suspension bridge and a traveler crossing it. And the figure in the foreground on the left is meant to be the governor of bridges, the administrator of bridges. There's some question as to whether such a post actually existed, but there it is in Felipe Guaman Poma's articles. Now, these bridges lasted long enough, even after some of them had been abandoned following the Spanish conquest. Local communities continued to rebuild them year after year, and I'll explain in a moment why that was necessary. But they lasted well into the 1800s, so that relatively recent travelers from other parts of the world could sketch and document them. George Squire, who was a representative of the US government in Peru, and after he finished his duties in Lima, went traveling throughout the country, sketching archaeological sites and bridges, drew this picture, this sketch of the Rio Pampas bridge. It's an area we visited just a few months ago, and it's a very impressive river and canyon. It wasn't easy to put a bridge up over there. Perhaps the most famous of the Inca bridges spanned the Rio Apurimac, not far from where the current road bridge crosses it. This bridge was 45 meters long and suspended 35 meters above the raging river below. It was sketched in 1854 by Lardner Gibbon. You can see there's a tunnel on the right-hand side by the right-hand mooring. If you look carefully on the left, it looks like there might be figures mounted on horseback, or at the very least pack animals of some sort that had just crossed the bridge. It gives you an idea of the strength that this had for pack animals and mounted riders to be able to cross. This is the same Rio Apurimac bridge sketched by George Squire, also in the late 1800s. And here you can clearly see mounted figures crossing the span, and also the tunnel with its openings, with its ventilation holes on the left-hand side. Really amazing architecture, a true feat of ancient civil engineering. And Clements Markham, the first president of the Royal Geographical Society of the UK, sketched this bridge. Made this sketch also of the Rio Apurimac bridge. You can see a tower on the left-hand side and a trail leading up to Curahuasi, which is a town that's still along the access route to one of our treks. But the bridge we're going to talk about tonight is the Quezhuachaca Bridge. It's located some 200 kilometers upstream along the Apurimac from this most famous bridge. It's the very last one that continues to be rebuilt each and every year by local communities using ancestral materials and techniques. And why do these bridges have to be rebuilt so often? Well, the straw fiber degrades rapidly in the intense ultraviolet radiation of the Andean highlands, and also because there's heavy rains for a part of the year. So the bridge is pretty solid for about 6 months, then it begins to sag, and after a year it just isn't safe anymore, and it has to be redone. Let's talk about the trek that leads to the Quezhuachaca Bridge. And this gives you an idea of what sort of information you can find in all the trek descriptions in the book. We start with a rating. This one is moderately difficult, obviously something subjective, but it gives you a sense of which treks are easier and which are more difficult. This one is 45 kilometers long. It takes 3 to 4 days. We move slowly, so those people who like to trek at a more lively pace will get through them more quickly. A few people might actually be slower than we are, but not many. The elevation that's covered by the trek, it ranges from 3,650 to 4,270 meters. We indicate the maps that you need to follow the route, whether water is available, and so forth. Also any hazards and annoyances that you might find along the way and that you have to prepare yourself for. Also what services are available along the route. This is just a brief introduction, a glimpse of what you need to know, perhaps when you're choosing a trek from among the 30 that we have in the book. We talk about access. In this case, the Quezuachaca trek is located in the department of Cusco. You can get to the trailhead either from the capital city, the departmental capital of Cusco, or from the slightly smaller city of Sicuani to the south, along the road to Puno. From either of those places, there's motorized transport to Combapata along the Cusco-Puno highway, and then you can get a taxi, basically a shared taxi, up to Yanaoka, which is the town at the trailhead. It's a place to get provisions as well, last-minute provisions, although you'll do better in Cusco or Sicuani just because they're larger. This is the map of the trek. Again, it gives you an idea of what our trekking maps look like. And for this particular trek, you start in Yanaoka, you climb gradually over a relatively low ridge, over a plateau, to get to the canyon of the Rio Apurimac, which is an imposing presence. And we follow this great canyon upstream, passing through several small towns and villages along the way, to Kewe and Percaro, which are the nearest population centers to the site of the bridge reconstruction itself. And although this trek can be done at any time of the year, preferably in the dry season, but it's interesting at any time, it's most exciting when we did it in the days preceding the annual reconstruction of the bridge. So let's follow the trail itself. This is the elevation profile. You can see there are quite a few ups and downs, but they're relatively small, maybe 200 meters, far less than on some of the other treks. And here we go, we're crossing the plateau from Yanaoka at the start of the trek, headed for the Rio Apurimac, the Great Canyon, which, as I say, is a very imposing presence when you first reach it. And along the way, you meet a number of families. The Ramos family of Hancoyo were our hosts one evening. You might ask for permission to pitch your tent outside their home, and more than likely they'll say, no, you can't stay outside in the cold. We'll make a room available for you inside. More than likely they'll offer you a meal, and that's almost certain to include potatoes. Here there are a variety of small native potatoes that are grown in the area, including as well as other native Andean tubers like the mashua and the oca. Corn is another great staple, and it's one that we particularly like. Toasted corn makes a wonderful trekking staple, and we often carry it with us along the way. It's something that you can resupply on as well quite easily. It's nutritious, it's non-perishable, and it's very tasty, especially if you've worked up a good appetite. And so as you carry along past these villages, you eventually reach a fragment of the Inca Road. And the bridge was there because there was a stretch of Inca Road in this area, possibly running to the department of Arequipa, possibly heading down to the coast as one of those perpendicular rungs of a ladder routes. It's not entirely certain. But once you're here, you know you're on the right track. And just a little bit further, if you're there at the right time of the year, you'll meet people harvesting the coya straw, a tough highland straw, which is the raw material for the bridge, and they'll begin to twist it. And from this coya, they make a relatively thin cord called quezua, and that is the principal element from which the bridge is put together. Every family, and there are 400 families that participate from 4 different communities, has to contribute 40 arms length of cord. And the arms lengths are counted and measured by the local authorities. And if you're missing a little bit, well, they have some of the raw material on hand, and they can twist just a little bit more to complete their quota. 30 strands of this cord are then laid out next to each other, and they're twisted again to make a sturdy rope. It's hard work, and it's got to be done just right, because the strength of the bridge, the safety of the bridge, depends on this. And one particular community are specialists in preparing this rope. These ropes are then braided. Three of them are combined into a heavy cable, and 4 of these cables form the floor of the bridge, while 2 slightly thinner ones, braided from just 2 of the ropes, make the handrails. Once the cables have been prepared and spread across the canyon, they have to be tensioned because they sag from their own weight. And in the background, you can see a group of some 30 men who haul on one of these cables and tug on it to make it nice and tight, taut, while 2 experts standing at the base of the rocky platform there will then hitch that so it doesn't slide back, and then they do it again, and it takes the better part of a day to get the tension sufficiently strong. Once the cables are up, the main support structures, then the sides of the bridge are woven into place. It's quite a lively process. You can see the ropes flying through the air, and they do it very quickly, very efficiently. And the final step in the construction process, one of the communities which lives in a lower area, not in the highlands, they don't have access to the koya straw because it doesn't grow down there. They instead bring sticks from bushes that grow near their home, and these are tied together and they form the floor of the bridge. And then when it's all ready, it's inaugurated with considerable ceremony. The year we were there, the Minister of Culture flew in from Lima. That same year, the year before actually, we were there in 2015. In 2014, the bridge became part of the UNESCO World Heritage Trust. And there were diplomas from the United Nations to be handed out to the different people who participate in the reconstruction. This was a very wise, a very savvy minister, though. You'll notice she's number 2 in line. She's the ranking authority there, but she's walking behind the mayor of the region. That's because he's a man and she's a woman, and there's a strongly held belief by the local people that women must not approach the bridge while it's being built, and they may not be the first ones across, because it will invoke the ire, the jealousy of Pachamama, the Mother Earth, and there will be a terrible accident. So the minister said, okay, we'll let the mayor go first, I'll walk a few paces behind him, and everybody was content. Some years previously, a governor of the Department of Cusco, a woman, felt that she wasn't going to have any of this. We were in the 21st century, and she was the ranking authority, and she was going to go first, and she did. And the local people who had just built the bridge burnt it down because they were so convinced that something terrible was going to happen. So the current minister took a much more diplomatic attitude. And then after it's been officially inaugurated, it's open to the public. And we had the exciting experience of walking across the recently built bridge. It was exciting, and it was a lot of fun. Now, the whole effort depends on seamless teamwork between the different communities and different members of the communities, all of whom have their special skills, and this teamwork has to be coordinated. That's the job of Senor Vitorino, the Chacacomayo, which roughly translates to bridge master. Here he is walking across the recently built bridge, carrying his diploma from the United Nations, obviously very proud. He's the heir to a 600-year-old tradition handed down in his family from father to son. And unfortunately, his own children were not there. They were professionals. They lived and worked in the capital of Lima, and they were too busy that weekend to come, which is actually a great shame, and I'm sure he felt it as well. Another important component is the spiritual side of the ritual, of the ceremony, and that's presided over by yatiris, or Andean priests, near the construction site. Here they are making offerings of alcohol and coca leaves and incense to Pachamama and the Apus, Mother Earth, and the mountain deities, also to propitiate a successful and safe construction project. And then, when it's all over, the final day of the 4-day process is devoted to a celebration with plenty of music and dance, participants from many different communities, food and drink, and it's a great big fun fiesta in which tourists are also welcome to participate. A few agencies bring in tours from Cusco. But if you've been there throughout the 4 days and if you've trekked out to it in the preceding days, it will be all the more meaningful to you. And that's our experience in a nutshell for just one of the treks. We hope that's given you a taste for what you can find in the book as a whole in Trekking Peru, and we warmly invite you to come down and enjoy the experience for yourselves. Thank you very much. We'll take any questions that folks might have sent in.
Thank you, Robert and Daisy. That was so fascinating. I just want to plan my trip to Peru right now, and that bridge, that bridge story is very powerful. Yeah, we have a question from Janet, who says, "How much Spanish should I learn before trekking in Peru? And is the dialect pretty different from what you hear in the United States?"
Perfect. It's very important to learn Spanish. Whenever you travel somewhere, if you can communicate with the people, you'll have a much richer experience. And you have to make the effort. It'll be so much better. As far as the dialect, well, in the States, I don't know, I guess you have some influence from Mexico, but if you're in Florida, you hear Spanish from all over Latin America. It's not that different, and even if it was Spanish from Spain, you can understand, it doesn't make a difference. Learn some Spanish and you'll be happy that you've done it. People appreciate it when you make the effort. Now, there are some places where even Spanish is not enough. We have on occasion met some people up in the mountains who don't speak Spanish, especially some older women. And in that case, there's always hands. You have to point, you have to ask for food, you want a drink. You'll manage, you'll find a way.
A smile is universally understood,
goes
isn't
a
it?
long way, definitely.
Mari is asking, what time of year is best for trekking in Peru?
Peru has a fairly well-defined trekking season, although there are always exceptions. But it runs basically from May through September. And that's when you can expect the driest conditions, although it also means the coldest nights, with temperatures in the highlands dipping down well below freezing. So you have to be prepared for that. But the dry conditions are ideal for trekking. Now, within those months, May can be particularly interesting because the rainy season is just ending. You might still get a few showers, but there'll be lots of water. There'll be water in the springs, the valleys will be green, they'll be filled with wildflowers. Drinking water won't be as much of an issue because the highlands of Peru can be quite dry, especially when you get into the months of August and early September. So May is one that comes highly recommended, but any time from May through to September is good.
And of course, June has many festivals, so in that sense, June is a good month. But it is quite cold, like Robert said, at night.
Cool. Jacqueline and Bernie in Chicago have a question. They asked, what kind of camera did you use to take such fantastic pictures?
Thank you for the compliment. We use a small, portable Sony point-and-shoot camera. It's not terribly sophisticated, but the great advantage that it has is its size. It's something that we can carry strapped just to the chest strap of our backpacks, and so it's always at hand. We can always pull it out in a hurry and take lots and lots of photos. And you know, if you take enough of them, you get lucky and a few are really good.
How many pictures did you take over your 3 years of researching this book?
Probably too many, Erica. 120,000. 40,000 pictures a season over 3 seasons. And then imagine the job that we had sorting through them.
That's astounding.
And when we'll finish the sorting.
Douglas is asking, do I need to get traveler's insurance?
it's a good idea whenever you go somewhere to travel abroad. You want to have insurance. You do have to check, however, that it includes hiking, trekking, and because not all the insurances do.
Be sure to read all the fine print. There are some insurance companies that consider trekking a hazardous activity and might not include it unless you get a specific policy that covers it. See if you have to pay out of pocket for any health emergencies or accidents. Generally, that is the case, and you'll be reimbursed later on. But each policy is different, so the key is to be well informed before you leave. But in a nutshell, the answer is yes, you should have drop insurance.
That's a good pro tip. Laura is wondering about drinking water and if she should filter it from streams, have her own filter. What do you do about water?
It's important to purify all drinking water, whether it comes from taps, streams, springs, whether you're way up high in the mountains where you think there can't be possibly any source of contamination above you. There are usually some animals living higher up, and you'd be amazed where some of the villages are. So we take no chances in that regard, and we recommend that you don't either. Always carry a means of purifying your drinking water, and there are several ways of doing that. Our personal favorite is a ceramic filter with an incorporated pump, so you can just filter water easily from any source, and that's safe to drink. It will remove all pathogens. Again, you have to see what particular filter you have, but generally it removes all pathogens except hepatitis A. So you should be vaccinated against that. But there are other means of purifying drinking water as well. Boiling will purify it, but that means taking a lot of extra weight with you in terms of fuel. And there are also iodine and other purification tablets, which we carry with us for an emergency. Although we don't like to use them on an ongoing basis, they can't be all that good for you if you take them for weeks and weeks on end, and they don't taste very nice at all. So our choice is a filter.
Cool. Joey says he is planning a trip after he graduates next spring. Is it okay to go trekking alone in Peru?
We recommend that people not go alone because if you're off when you get a sprained ankle, it might be too difficult for you to make your way back safely. Having said that, we do know of people who go alone and haven't had any problems. So I think better get a nice companion to go with you.
Hey, a romantic couple on the trail.
In a similar vein, Andrew is asking for first-time trekkers in Peru, would you recommend a guided trip?
That's certainly a worthwhile option that anyone can consider, not only first-time trekkers. There are basically 3 different routes with some additional variations that you can take to go trekking in Peru. Clearly the easiest, also the most expensive, is a guided expedition, a guided trek that somebody else organizes for you. Everything will be arranged for you. You just have to prepare yourself, you have to show up, and you have to enjoy. But the food and logistics will be taken care of. There will be pack animals or porters, there will be cooks, there will be guides. And it's a way that you can concentrate on the trekking experience itself without worrying about these things. And of course, if it's the first time you're doing it, it's an opportunity to learn as well. For those who want to be more involved, you can arrange your own crew. You can arrange your own guides, muleteers, porters, depending on what's necessary. Something that we do from time to time is we will hire on a muleteer and one of his pack animals to get us up the hill at the very beginning of a long trek when you're heaviest because you're carrying most weight in food. And it's basically like an elevator ride. The person can usually return starting 2 or 3 in the afternoon. They get back home and you don't have to worry about additional supplies, additional gear, additional tents, additional food for them. But they've helped you a great deal when you need the help most, when your pack is heaviest. But perhaps the fullest and richest experience, and the one that we've most enjoyed and what's been the mainstay of our treks, has been simply to do it ourselves. To organize our own food, to do our own logistics, to carry everything we need on our own backs, on our own shoulders, and to know that, to have the satisfaction at the end of the day that we've done it ourselves. And for those with sufficient experience and those with the desire to do so, that is the experience that we would most recommend to our readers, don't you think?
Yes, but it is a matter of personal taste. And there is the option also of hiring a local guide, a local person, or a local muleteer. But first you want to check that they know the route you want to take.
Not everyone will necessarily know the routes described in our book. So you want to find out about their experience, where they normally go. And you also want to check about how many other people go there. There are a handful of routes in Peru which frankly are overcrowded. And I think that to have the best experience for yourself, and also to avoid further damage to some of these areas, which are basically groaning under the weight of their own success, these routes are perhaps best avoided. That's enough said.
In a similar vein to that, Eric is asking, what was the most interesting trek for the two of you?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is a real tough question.
That's a tough one, Eric. They were all interesting in their own right. We have a penchant for long-haul trekking. The longest trek in the book is 135 kilometers, I believe. It took us some 3 weeks, and we loved that. But you can also have a lot of fun on a day walk. The one that we described in the talk now, the rebuilding of the bridge at Quezhuachaca, was particularly memorable because of the rebuilding ceremony, as was our visit to the pilgrimage site at Coyuriti. It was one of the slides that Daisy showed in the first half of the talk, with all the pilgrims, with ukukus, which literally mean bears. They were the guardians of the sacred mountains. 100,000 people participate in that pilgrimage. It's just an amazing experience. So those are two of the more memorable ones, but they were all memorable in their own right.
Yes, and many of the treks, if you don't like a longer trek like we do, you can do just 1 or 2 days, and often just as soon as you get away from the town, you have some pretty nice experiences. There's so much to explore there.
Lynn is asking about day hiking, where if you're only out for a few hours, do you have any safety advice?
The safety advice is similar regardless of the length of your trek, and perhaps the most important advice regarding safety is to know and respect your own limitations. There are some pretty easy and straightforward treks in the book. There are also some pretty demanding ones, and it's important that you choose treks that are right for you. It's important to be fully acclimatized to the altitude of the area that you plan to trek in, and we recommend a number of good acclimatization hikes in each of the different trekking regions that are covered in the book. So you don't want to get off an airplane in Cusco and head up to a 5,000 meter pass the next day. That's definitely asking for trouble, regardless of the length of the trek. Other advice, as we mentioned before, it's probably best not to go all alone, although there may be some exceptions. But, you know, just a minor inconvenience or injury can become a big deal if you're all on your own and there's nobody to help you or go seek help in the event of a mishap. You want to keep an eye on the weather as well, although it's quite reliable during the trekking season from May to September. We have had snowstorms during those months. And you want to make sure that you have adequate gear for cold weather, for wet weather, even though it not likely to rain, but you never know. It can rain or snow.
Even on a day hike, you should take several layers. It can, be beautiful, sunny. You're there in shorts and short sleeves, and then a cloud moves in or a storm moves in, and many layers. Take a day pack and take gear. Don't
Don't head
go
out in
so
shorts and
nice.
t-shirts.
No,
And
definitely not, because by the afternoon, even if it's still beautifully clear, it can get quite
it gets
cold.
very cold. Take a small first aid kit with you, and the details of that are covered in the book. There's a first aid kit checklist, and familiarize yourself with basic first aid techniques, so you know how to use what you're carrying with you. Basically, common sense is at the root of it all, but especially don't exceed your own limits. Be aware of what they are and stay within them.
Many of the day hikes have people on them, so, or if you're in a hostel, if you're alone, you're in a hostel, just check if someone else wants to go where you're going, and that way you're not going alone. It's one safety advice. And you have to ask around before heading out about public safety. Generally, Peru is very safe, but there might
And the
be,
hiking trails of Peru are
yes,
probably
even
the safest
safer than
part of the
the
country.
cities or the towns. But before heading out, ask in your hotel, ask in the tourist office if there is one. Is that route okay? There are very few places where there have been some incidents that travelers go there and somebody might have stolen a camera or whatever. Ask first, and once again, that's where having language skills come in handy.
Yeah, and when in doubt, ask. Ask the local people. They know best.
Great. Thank you, you both. Well, I think that is all the time that we have today. And thank you to the audience for joining us tonight. We hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Trekking Peru is available wherever books are sold and also on our website, mountaineersbooks.org, where if you use the code LLAMA, you'll receive a 20% discount. This is truly a gorgeous book and a unique opportunity to explore a beautiful, diverse place. Again, the discount code is LLAMA, but if you don't have a pencil, don't worry. We will email you the code in a day or two when we send you a recording of Daisy and Robert's presentation. Check back for our next presentation in January, and thank you so much. See you in the new year.
If I may add, Erica, just one thing.
Uh-huh.
There's more information in the website trekkingperu.org, and everybody's invited to learn more about it.
And thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. It's been a lot of fun.
Good night.